So let's get our workbooks out and look at the homework for chapter 29. We'll start with the parsing and see if there are any questions that you have about this. So number 2 here, we have anecthenti. Let's just talk about the actual forms that we see first of all. So we have a new tau here. So what sort of information does that give us that we want to take into account in parsing here? That this is a participle, right? New tau. Now, under most circumstances, a new tau is what? Active or middle passive? Active. So with those pesky aorist passives, I have to then go on and look to see, do I have one of the aorist passive tense formatives that could throw me off here? Is there such a thing? Yes, there is, isn't there? So what do I have here? I have a theta epsilon, right? And that is, pardon my pun, but it's indicative of a non-indicative verb form. It's an aorist passive tense formative. So I know what I've got here is an aorist passive participle. Look at the iota at the end. And what have I got? That's a case ending. That tells me it's dative, singular, and which genders could the iota be? Masculine or neuter, right? Okay, good. So I've got the actual parsing information down right. So what I'm left with over here is the en-ech part. En-ech-thenti. So what are some possibilities for a lexical form here? Okay. So if echo is our verb, how would we account for what we've got here? What's that? Right. Yeah, so we have this n prefix, right? So what else? A new word, huh? From Pharaoh? Yeah. So are you telling me that this has a completely different stem than Pharaoh does? And Pharaoh means to be king of Egypt, right? Okay. So this is one of those verbs where you might want to check your principal part. So let's just take a quick look at it, okay? Now, what you want to do is work your way backwards from this, okay? So I have the eta on the aorist passive indicative first person singular. Aorist passive indicatives are always going to do what at the front end of the verb? They're going to augment. And so if I've got an eta at the beginning, then that's telling me that it's augmented in the indicative. I need to unaugment it to create the participle, right? So, So participles unaugmented. So the eta goes to epsilon here. Okay. Now the nech is here. And then the theta eta becomes theta epsilon in the aorist passive participle. Okay. In other words, I strip off the personal ending and the tense formative for the indicative and put the tense formative for the participle there. And then whatever things go with the participle, in this case being the new tau and the case ending. So this is indeed the sixth principal part of Pharaoh. And since it's so different, you've got to memorize this one. All right? You just got to learn that. So if you look at all the forms of Pharaoh, it's actually quite distinct. So Pharaoh, oiso for the future, and then enenka is the aorist, and enocha, which is the perfect active indicative. Notice there's no kappa alpha here, just an alpha. So this perfect active is what kind of perfect? It's a second perfect, not a first, right? Kappa alphas are first perfect, just alpha second. Okay, we have no attested perfect middle passive, and then anekthane is the aorist passive. So you want to learn those forms. Yeah, so it's a first aorist passive. Oh, I'm sorry. You're looking at the aorist active? Yeah, this is one that it looks like it would have been a second aorist that has adapted the first aorist vowel pointing. So sort of like apon does that sometimes. I'm pretty sure if you go back to that part of the chapter, let's see, where was second aorist? That was 22, I think. I think Pharaoh's going to be one of the forms that he points you to that uses the oh no, I'm sorry. He gave you second aorist first, right? So it's when you get to the first aorist, which is chapter 23, that he gives you a handful of forms that do this. So 23.12, this is on page 206. Page 206, notice you have second aorist stems with first aorist endings here, and it's 1, 2, 3, it's the fourth one. Ain and kan, you'll get ain and ka. Okay. All right, great. Other questions? Let's look at number 8 together. So we have grapsasin. There's enough of the verb here that you can tell what the actual lexical form is, right? What would that be? Grapho, right? Or is this a noun? Is it graphe? So this is the verb grapho. Okay. There's no reason graphe would have changed to a psi in the middle, right? That's not characteristic of nouns doing that. But verbs could do something like that when we're adding tense formatives, right? And so that's what we're dealing with here. Now, let's take a look at what we've got on the back side. I have the psa scene, and what might we be seeing here in the psi? What element is hiding in here? The sigma, that's right. Good old sigma alpha, right, where the sigma has become obscured through contact with the phi. So that's where the psi comes from. So that tells me I'm dealing with an aorist form, right? Aorists use sigma alpha in which voices? The active and middle, okay? Active and middle. Do I have a menomenic form coming after? No, so it's going to be aorist active participle and not aorist middle, okay? All right. Now, what does this sigma iota nu tell me about this form? If I see C or seen, which case gender number is that? Yeah, that's dative plural, okay? Let's think about this for just a moment. So it's grapsa. I should have had a nu tau and then my C. Why is the nu tau missing here on grapsasin? That's right. Nu taus before sigma fall out, right? Tau's a dental, nu's a dental. Those go away. So I do have my aorist active nu tau with sigma alpha, okay? And then the C ending is the dative plural. And so if it's got the nu tau, even though we can't see it, then we know that this is what two genders? It can't be feminine, right? It's got to be masculine or neuter. All right? So that's it. So grapsasin. Right, it would be sa, and then we would use the first declension case endings with that. So sase. So the dative plural would be sasais. Yep. Okay, good. Now, since this is in the adjectival participle chapter, if this were an attributive adjective or an attributive use of the participle, it would just be writing. Okay, writing. So something like, or maybe writing or having written. Got to give myself a little room here. If it were adverbial, something like after writing, or after having written, or after they wrote, or something like that. Okay, good. Any other questions on these? For number 9, we have the form kerususin, or kerususi. The movable nu is not here. You might see that in some other forms like this. What's the lexical form? There's enough of this verb here to be able to identify that, right? What is this? Keruso. Good. I can never say this without thinking of Robinson. Keruso. And I'm sure that he heralded the good news when he was found. Keruso. Two possibilities. Let's go with the easiest possibility. That is the indicative form. If this is an indicative mood verb, what is this? This "-usy" ending. Loosey-goosey. Where do you see that? That's the third person plural form for active or primary or secondary endings. Primary. We see this in the present and in the future, right? So, is this present, future, perfect? What are we looking at? Yeah, certainly using the present stem, kerus, right? And then usi, like Lego, legusi. So this would be present, active, indicative. Now, we're going to have to draw a line here because this isn't the only option. But if it's the top one, kerususin, how would we translate that? They preach, or they are preaching, okay? Now, what's the other possibility for this? What might this be? Could be a participle. Now, I see the usi. So is this one of those usa participles? No? Yes? This isn't that feminine usa kind of active participle? No? Oh, okay. So this is a masculine or neuter. So you mean there's a neutal that's supposed to be here? Uh-oh. What happened to that? It dropped. Okay, very good. So, is this still a present stem? Is there any reason to think it's anything else but the present stem? No, I don't have any aorist tense formatives, do I? But you might say, yeah, but maybe keruso is a second aorist form. Okay, let's assume that's true. If it's second aorist, what have we learned that the second aorist stem always is in relation to the present stem? It's always different. And here, this is the same, isn't it? Kerus. So this couldn't be a second aorist. All right, so we'll go with present. And the suggestion is that it is an active participle. And if it's active, we're looking for neutal forms or the usa if it's feminine. So this would have been kerus aunt C. Is that what you're saying? Kerus aunt C. Tals before sigma do what? They drop out. That leaves me with a nu before a sigma. What does it do? It drops out. That leaves me a short little omicron before a sigma with lost consonants. It compensatorily lengthens to a diphthong. Okay? Hannah is right. So, and the C ending then is what case gender number? Dative. It's not just iota, it's sigma iota. So it's dative plural. And what gender? Masculine or neuter. The other masculine or neuter. Okay, great. So here's a question for you. What would the dative plural feminine form have looked like? Kerus. And then the nominative would have been kerususa, right? Kerususa. Luo, luusa. Keruso, kerususa. Let's make it dative plural. How do we do that? That's right. Add the iota sigma. Kerususais. You see how different that is from kerususi? Usais? Usi. You see? All right. So, and then as participles, we might translate this how? It's a present stemmed participle. So if we're using temporal ideas, what's our key word? While preaching. All right. Good? That's a little tricky one there. All right. Let's look at 3 then. Sarxine. Is that a participle? You don't think so? It is a noun. What's the noun? Sarx. What is the article that you learned with the word sarx? Yes. Hey, hey. What gender is sarx then? It's feminine. What declension pattern does it follow? What's the root or the stem? It's sark with a kappa, sark, right? It has a consonantal stem. And so it's third declension. So what am I dealing with here? Sark is a kappa, but I have xi hanging out here. So this must be the result of a kappa plus a sigma iota and the movable nu. So which case ending is that C? It's dative, plural, and we learned, you can't tell by looking at the case ending what gender it is. You just got to know the gender of the noun. Dative, plural, feminine, right? And since we're not dealing with a participle, we don't use these other columns here, all right? So how would I translate this? Yeah, it's flesh or body, right? Sarx is flesh or body. Now this is plural, so I want to use a translation for sarx that would make sense. So fleshes doesn't really work well in English, but bodies does. So we could say bodies. And then, yeah, what's our dative? What's one of the dative keywords? Yeah, to, in, or with bodies, right? So we'll just use to keep it short and sweet. So to bodies, in bodies. All right. It is. It's there to trip you up. Not very nice, is it? All right. Yeah, I know. All right. So what are we looking at here with poieson? That does look like a sigma alpha, doesn't it? So that would make this, so first aorist, active or middle, participle, or could this be an indicative? No. There's no augment over here, right? No augment, so this can't be indicative. So if it's a participle, then I got to ask myself, if it's middle, what must I have after the sa? Menomene. Do I have menomene? Nope. So then if it's active, I'm normally going to be looking for nu tau after the sa, right? And if it's feminine, it's going to be sa, right? Sa, first declension feminine. I don't have any sa here. But I might have a nu tau where the tau is missing. Which case gender number will drop the tau at the end in the aorist active participle? Nominative, singular, neuter. And if it's neuter, the nominative is always the same as the accusative, isn't it? So that could be either one. All right, that's it. Poiesan. If it were the nominative singular masculine, it would be poiesas. Poiesas. All right, so this is from poieo. Good. And my translation would be something like, if it's aorist, after doing, right? Okay, good. Look at 5, balamanoi. Balamanoi. What do you think the lexical form is? Balo. How many lambdas in balo? 2. Excellent. So yeah, so this has got the single lambda. Is this a first or a second aorist? It is a second aorist. Good. Is it active or middle? Yeah, you see the menomene? Yep, so it's second aorist, middle participle. Now, I have an alpha stem vowel. Is that masculine? It's feminine. And what declension pattern? It's first declension. So, when I have that iota after the alpha, it is nominative plural feminine, right? Everybody see that? Hora becomes horai, right? Graphe becomes graphi, the nominative plural feminine. All right, good. So, if I'm translating this adverbially, it would be something like, and temporally, after, yeah, no, it's middle, so the person it's describing is doing the action. So after throwing oneself, or after throwing for oneself, or some such thing, if you want to add that for your middle idea. All right, good. Real quickly, number 7 is epoiesan. Epoiesan. Is that a participle? How do you know that's not a participle? It is augmented. So let's compare that with poiesan. See the difference there? Okay, so this must be what? Aorist. Is it active? Yeah. Yeah. Aorist, active, indicative, and what? Third plural. Yeah, remember it's elusa for singulars, no ending. Elusa, elusas, eluse, elusamen, elusate, elusan. So yeah, this is third plural from poieo. How would you translate this? They made. Yeah, they did or made. So we've got a form of pharaoh, which means to do what? Yeah, to carry. So, pharaoh. Now take a look at what's over here. We have the uses ending, which should remind you of the on, ontas, usa, uses, on, ontas, 6 forms of the participle. Where did we see that? That could be for the present active participle when it's feminine. And we also learned the second aorist active participle too, right? Because that's not going to use the sigma alpha. It's going to just have the second aorist stem, connecting vowels, and then the participle morphemes. So this pheruses here, it looks very, very much like what we would expect the present active participle to look like. So we put that over here, present active participle. Looking at the ace ending, I've got the eta with the sigma here. What case, gender, or number does that look like? Genitive, singular, and feminine, right? Okay, great. Now, here's the question. Does pharaoh use a first or a second aorist? And how would you know? Ah, that's a good question, right? Maybe it's a second aorist. If it uses a second aorist and the lexical forms stem here is fair, right there, okay, this does match that, doesn't it? And if Pharaoh uses a second aorist, then this has to be the present active participle, okay? But how would you find out? You can go to your principal parts sheet or page, and since phi is at the end of the Greek alphabet, you're going to go to the very last part of that. And if you look on page 380, which column do I want to look at for the row Pharaoh to find the aorist active? First column's the lexical form, which is always present active indicative for singular. What's the second column? Future active indicative. Third column? Aorist. Okay, so look at Pharaoh's aorist form. It's a-ning-ka. A-ning-ka. Do we have that stem in our form here? No. So what we're looking at is definitely the present active participle, right? Yeah. This is actually a second aorist that uses a first aorist alpha for its form. You may remember that. Apon does that at some times. And this is one that does that too. But we don't need to even worry about that right now because we don't see anything like that here. This is referring to a woman, something or a thing that's feminine, and it's an active participle. So carrying, bearing, if it's substantival use of the participle, it would be something like, because it's genitive, of one carrying or bearing, or of one who is carrying or bearing. It could be while carrying or bearing if it's an adverbial use of the present participle. So there's a number of ways to translate it. All right. Other questions? That's right. That's right. That's a very good point. So had we seen an alpha here instead of the eta, then this would be accusative plural feminine. All right? That's terrific. Okay. Good. Other questions? So looking at number 6, we have proselthantone. Proselthantone. What does the new tau here tell me about this form? That's an active participle, okay? Except for there's one place where a passive participle uses new tau. Which one? It's the pesky aorist passives, right? Those behave like they're active, but generally active participles. So we'll go ahead and jot that down, and then we'll correct ourselves if we need to. Which stem might I be looking at here? I have pros, el, tha, nt. Elth. What's elth? What's that related to? What lexical form? What's that? Erchomai. So erchomai is the present stem, erch. And I don't have erch, I have elth, so this must not be the present, right? It must be what? It must be an aorist. Is it a first or a second aorist? The new tau tells me it's active, so what would a first aorist active form have? Yeah, the sigma alpha, and I ain't got that, do I? So that's a second aorist. Good. And then the own is, it could be if the own comes right after the stem, like lu own. But here I have the new tau followed by own. So own is the case ending, and that's genitive plural. And masculine or neuter, right? The feminine forms would have the usa, uson kind of form. So, genitive plural, masculine, neuter. Second aorist active participle. And if we were translating this as an adverbial participle, you might translate it how, since it's aorist. After, and pros erchomai, ooh, I didn't put the pros there. Pros erchomai is to go to or into, good. So after going into, and if it's a attributive participle, then I don't use the while or because, or after, I just use the ing form, which would be going into. Going into. Okay?